At the time of this story, I would go on Instagram just about every day. Most of my friends and I followed each other and had for years. We would like and comment on each other's posts and things like that. We would also post stories almost every day. Every now and again there would be bots or weird people on Instagram, but it didn't happen too often. And when it did, you would typically just ignore them or maybe block them at most. Everything was usually harmless. They would maybe leave a weird comment or try to follow you, but overall nothing that strange had happened. One time though, I remember that I saw an Instagram notification that I had a message request. It said it was from my same name. This confused me, and I opened the app to see what was going on. You see, I don't have a very common name. It's not like super unusual or anything, but it's not very common. When I went in the Instagram app, I saw that this account had my exact same first and last name, and the profile picture was the same profile picture that I had. They were requesting to message me. The only difference between this account and mine were the amount of followers and people they were following, and obviously the username as well, because two people are not allowed to have the same exact username. It was a very similar name to mine though, but just off by an underscore or period or something like that. Anyways, I accepted the message because I was curious as to who this was. The person simply said, "Hi." I clicked on their profile and it had no posts, was only following a few people, and just had a few followers. None of them were people who I knew or recognized. I responded asking who this was. They responded pretty quickly back to me saying, "I'm you." Now, this was an unusual behavior for a bot, and at this point it seemed more likely to be a prank, but I didn't really know anybody who would do something like this. I asked, "What do you mean?" They simply said again, "I'm you." I was fed up and I closed Instagram and then got off my phone. I thought to myself, that's enough internet for today. However, hours later when I used my phone again, I saw that there were multiple Instagram messages now. They were all from that same account. The account just kept saying "hi" over and over again. A few times it said things like "answer me" or "respond now." I finally went back on and responded saying, "What do you want?" Soon after, the account simply sent me a link. I didn't know what it was, but I was hesitant to click it. Sometimes links can be viruses or scams of some sort. I did not know what this could be, because the link was just a bunch of random letters and numbers it seemed. However, my curiosity ended up getting the better of me and I clicked on the link. It took me to this archaic looking web page. It looked like those websites from the 90s that don't have much design and use Times New Roman font. But this web page was all white and had several headings of text and small paragraphs after them. Then there were photos, and the web page appeared to be all about me. There were pictures of me, mostly taken from my social media, but some were taken from other places, such as my friends' pages or even when I was in a school newspaper. It was like a biography of me. It said my name, date of birth, my parents, siblings, and where I was from. It said every school that I went to as well. It was almost like a Wikipedia page, but more archaic looking and less organized. And I'm not famous or anything, so this was really weird. When I saw it, I was totally creeped out. Whoever made this really took a lot of time to put it together. I left the website and sent another message to the person demanding to know what this was all about. But this time, they didn't answer. A short time later, I went back on Instagram. Except now, surprisingly, the person had blocked me. I was now so confused. I tried to find the account again, but could not. After that, there were no more strange messages or anything like that. I never saw that account again, and I never found out who was doing that. This happened a long time ago. Back then, I lived in an apartment by myself. This would have been sometime in the early 2000s. So I was trying to call my friend one night on the home phone in my apartment. I had her number written down and had almost memorized it. My phone was kind of old and I didn't have caller ID or many modern functions. That wasn't a big deal to me though. So anyways, as I was dialing my friend, I must have dialed the wrong number, because when the call got picked up, I heard a man's voice. I knew that my friend lived alone like I did. Still, I asked if she was there, and the guy said that nobody by that name lived there. So I said that I was sorry and I must have dialed the wrong number. The man said he understood and it was okay. Then I hung up. I dialed again for my friend, and this time made sure to dial each number correctly. When the call went through, I got my friend and then I started talking to her. We were best friends and we talked on the phone almost every day, many times for hours. So when we were talking, I remember that I heard another call coming in, but I didn't bother to hang up and answer it. I talked with my friend for about an hour and then hung up. After that, it was sometime at night, maybe 9 o'clock or so. I got another call on my phone and picked it up. I heard a man on the other end and realized that it was the same guy who I had accidentally called earlier. He said hi and that he tried to call me before. I told him that the line had been busy. He said that after I called him, I sounded cute and asked if I wanted to go on a date with him sometime. He also said that based on my area code, he figured that we lived in the same city. I realized that the guy must have had caller ID. To me, this did not seem like a good idea. For one, his voice didn't sound very attractive to me, but also, for me being a young woman, I didn't think it was smart to go on a random blind date with a guy who I accidentally called the wrong number. I told him that I just didn't want to, and it was nothing personal, but I didn't know him. He tried to convince me, but I really didn't want to, and I was finding it to be increasingly awkward. Finally, the guy said he understood and then hung up. But apparently, he did not in fact understand, because he called me back like 10 minutes later. I answered because again, I didn't have caller ID, and I didn't know who it was that was calling me. When I answered the phone, he asked if I had changed my mind yet. I said no, it's been like 10 minutes. He said that he just thought he would ask, and I said, okay, goodbye now, and then I hung up the phone. Then I called my friend again, because I just had to tell her about the crazy thing that had happened. For the rest of the night, the man did not call. The next day, I was at work during the day like usual. I got back to my apartment and was having a normal night with no strange phone calls or anything. But at about 8 o'clock, there was a knock on my apartment door. I didn't know who it would be because I wasn't expecting anyone, and I wasn't thinking about the man in the moment who had called me previously. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a guy standing there. He just had a creepy look to him and gave me a bad feeling, and I'm not just saying that. I had not remembered the phone calls in that moment. I was about to answer the door when I saw the guy reach into his pocket. I was curious, so I kept watching. He took out a cell phone and then started dialing a number. Moments later, my phone rang. That's when I realized who it was. I walked over to my phone, and for some reason, I answered. The guy asked me if I was at home, and I said, "What's it to you?" The man told me to open my front door. That's when I knew for a fact who it was, and I told him to go away. He said that I should go out with him and give him a chance. I told him that if he didn't go away now, I was calling the cops. He got offended and then finally hung up the phone. I went to the peephole again thinking that he had left, but he hadn't. He was still there. Then he loudly banged on the door. I still didn't open it. He yelled at me, demanding that I let him in, but I still wouldn't do it. By this point, I was about to call the cops, but he finally turned and stormed off. That's when I looked out of the door again for a while and made sure that he had gone. And after he was out of sight, I looked out into the hallway just to make sure that he was actually gone. He was. I was extremely creeped out by the guy. I don't know how he knew exactly where I lived. I think that maybe he looked me up in the phone book. It was a very scary experience though. For 1 year when I was in middle school, I did homeschool. It was mostly just online, so it was pretty much like online classes for college. Except there wasn't really a teacher, it was all done on this computer program and on the internet. So every day for school, I would just sit in my room at my desk and computer and do school there. Overall, it wasn't too bad, but I didn't really leave the house much. When I wasn't doing school, I would stay on my computer and usually play video games there as well. And the next day, I remember that I did my school again like normal. After that, I played video games, and I remember that I stayed up late playing on my computer after my parents had gone to bed. But during this time, at probably after midnight, I got another email. It was from the same school email that I had received the night prior. This one had no words, but just a photo that was attached. The picture was of my house at night, taken from the street. I was so confused and also creeped out. It was very strange. I looked at the picture for like 5 minutes straight, wondering what was going on. Then I went over and looked out of my bedroom window. I did notice that there was a car parked on the side of the road just past our house. The engine was off, and I couldn't tell if anybody was inside or not because it was too dark, but it usually was not there. Most of the time, cars did not randomly park on the side of our street. I was really freaked out. I went back to the email and just kept looking at it. Then I realized something. This was not the official email address from my school. They had the same name and same logo, but the email for this was one letter off, which is why it was hard to see at a glance. This was somebody pretending to be my school. I had no idea who would do this or why though. It wouldn't be one of my friends messing with me or something like that, because I wasn't even old enough to drive and neither were any of my friends. This was so strange. I went back over and looked out of the window again. The car was still there. I thought about waking up my parents, but didn't. I went back to the email and blocked the account. Then I just hoped that nothing crazy would happen. I went around the house and made sure that every door was locked, which it was. Then I made sure that every window was completely covered. A few were not, and I covered them. After that, I went back to my room. I checked out of my window again, and the car was still there. After that, I stayed at my computer playing video games to try to get myself to calm down. Eventually, I did. It was probably close to 3 a.m. by the time I was able to fall asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I checked the window, and the car was gone. I also checked my email and did not receive anything else strange. I went around the house and there was no signs of a break-in or anything, so everything was all good. After that, I wondered about it for a few days, but nothing else happened. I only did that school for that 1 year, and nothing else strange like that ever happened again. I still wonder who did it, and was that car on the street whoever took the picture? I mean, somebody had to know that I did that school program, and then they would have had to pretend to be them to get me to fill out the form for my address. But for what purpose? Just to creep me out with that picture? I'm really glad that nothing else happened. Last year, I had a pretty creepy experience involving a wrong number, or at least that's what I thought it was. Randomly one time, I got a text from a number that I didn't know simply saying, "Hey." I wasn't sure who it was, so I said, "Hey, who's this? I don't have this number saved." The person responded saying, "Hey Mark, meet me." My name is not Mark, so I knew that it was a wrong number. I responded saying that I was not Mark and they must have the wrong number. Very soon after, I got another text. They said, "Okay, who are you?" I realized then that it was probably a scam and they were trying to get my information. I heard about some of these sort of text scams and had gotten one once before. Most of the time, if somebody actually has the wrong number, they will just say, "My bad, wrong number," and then not text again. They wouldn't be very interested in you, but only interested in the actual number they're trying to reach. So when they asked who I was, I didn't respond. But surprising to me, they texted again a while later. This time they texted saying, "Answer me." This was strange, but I still thought that it was a scam. I responded and said, "I'm not falling for your scam." I thought then that they wouldn't respond to me, but I was wrong. Just moments after I sent the text, they tried FaceTiming me. At first, I didn't answer it. I thought that it was too weird, and I was not expecting it at all. But after I didn't pick up, when I did, it was hard to see at first who was on the other end. But after looking, it appeared to be somebody who was in a very dark, unfinished basement. I couldn't make out the details of their face because it was too dark and sort of blurry. The quality wasn't the greatest either, but I could tell that it appeared to be a man, and he started talking in an extremely deep voice. The voice did not sound natural, like he was trying to fake it. As he spoke, I couldn't make out any of the words that he was saying either. He was sort of mumbling, and it didn't make any sense. I said nothing because I had no idea what to possibly say. I just sat there watching him in shock. He continued to move around the dark basement and ramble incoherently in that creepy deep voice. He went on for about a minute or two, and I couldn't take it anymore. I ended the call, and then I blocked the number right then and there. It was really strange. After that, I didn't get any other weird texts or calls. Looking back at it now, I still have no clue who that was. I'm not sure why they texted me or called me. It was not the scam like I thought it was. But what was it? I'm still trying to figure that out. This happened just a couple of months ago. It was the weekend and I was up late watching TV. I was in the living room of my apartment and relaxing after a long day of work. My apartment is not that big. It's basically one giant room with a kitchen at the front by the door and then the living room past that. I think that's a pretty standard setup. Then there's one bathroom and one bedroom off of that down the tiny hallway. So as I sat there feeling relaxed and having an ice-cold drink, I suddenly heard a knock at my apartment door. I didn't know who would possibly be there because I obviously was not expecting anybody. I looked over to the door but did not bother to get up. I figured that it was probably a mistake. Maybe somebody was trying to go to another apartment. After maybe 20 seconds, they knocked again. Then I heard a younger man's voice say, "DoorDash." Now, I did not order anything on DoorDash. In my mind, this was a simple mistake. One of my neighbors must have ordered food, and the delivery guy simply had his address mistaken. So I got up from the couch and started walking over to the door. My plan was to just tell the guy that he had the wrong place and to double check the address. When I got to the door, I opened it. But as soon as I did, I saw that there was not just one guy there, but there was 3 men. They were all dressed in dark clothing and had sweatshirts and jackets with hoods up. My door was open for literally half a second, and as soon as I started to open it, I thought better of it and began to close it. The main guy right at the door then went forward and tried to stop me, but he must have realized that he would have gotten the door slammed on his arm because he almost reached in and then didn't. After I slammed my door shut, I very quickly locked it. Pretty much the next second, the guy tried to open the door. Then I heard the other 2 guys get closer. They kept trying to open the door, and then they started banging on it and kicking it as well. It was really loud, and I thought that the door might break. So I quickly ran into the other room, and then I got my phone and dialed 911. But the guys banging and trying to break in did not last long, because within probably a minute, it stopped. Then I heard them all running away down the hallway. I told the police what was going on, and they said they would have an officer there shortly. And the cops arrived pretty quick. It was probably within like 5 minutes. However, by that time, the men were all gone. I'm not sure where they went, but they were no longer in the apartment complex. I assumed that it was an attempted robbery, but I don't know why they picked me. My apartment is just like all the others. I'm not rich or anything, so maybe it was just random. I'm just glad that I had fast instincts to close the door as soon as I had opened it, or else I think they might have barged their way in. I have a horror story from Snapchat that happened just last year. I use Snapchat quite a bit and communicate with friends on there a lot. I post stories pretty frequently as well. I've had Snapchat for almost 10 years, and over time have accumulated lots of friends on the app. When I post a story, sometimes friends will reply to them and say whatever. Now, starting last year, every time I posted a story, this one guy would seem to reply to it. I didn't really know who he was, but his name on Snapchat was Dave. I don't have any idea when exactly he added me or anything, but he would say things that were sort of creepy. Like one, for example, that stood out was when I posted a picture of my new apartment. The picture was just of like the living room and kitchen. He responded saying, "I wish I knew where you lived." It was almost like he was trying to be weird. I never bothered to delete him or anything because I didn't think it was too much of a problem. He never snapped me outside of responding to my stories, but eventually I got tired of it and deleted him. I didn't really think anything of it after doing so, but the next day, a new account added me on Snapchat. I didn't know that it was him making another account. I added him back out of curiosity because I had no idea who it was. Then, he sent me a snap asking why I deleted him. I then realized who it was and then deleted that account. Not too long after that, he tried to add me again with another one, but I did not add him back. He was using different usernames, but I knew that it was still him. The very next day, I got a text on my phone from a number that I did not recognize. It just said, "Hi," and I asked who it was. It took until like the 3rd text for me to realize that it was the same guy. He started cursing me out, calling me terrible things, and was clearly very angry how I kept ignoring him. I blocked the number after he sent me about 20 texts in the span of 2 minutes. However, this couldn't stop him either. As most of you know, there are apps and websites where you can get new phone numbers for free. I've really never used one, but I know that they exist. I'm guessing that's what this guy was doing, because I got another text a while later. It was very clearly still him. I blocked this number too. Then, a while later, there was another new number. This time, though, he left a voicemail. I listened to it, and the man sounded much older than me. He basically called me every name in the book and then threatened me. I blocked his number. This continued for several days. I tried to ignore it as best as I could and just kept blocking his numbers. Soon, though, I decided to get a new phone. I sort of needed one anyways, and decided to get a new number as well. I also changed my Snapchat username. After that, I never heard from the guy again. Hopefully it stays that way. Several years ago, I moved into a new apartment. This one was nicer than the previous apartment that I had been living in, and I was excited to live there. I got a one-bedroom place on the first floor of the building in an apartment complex that had a few different buildings. So after moving in, within probably 2 weeks of living there, I remember that I got this strange text message. I did not know who it was from because I didn't recognize the number. The text just said hi, and I ignored it, assuming it to be a wrong number or something. Several days later, though, I got another text. It was from the same number, but it said, "I can see you." I found this to be more suspicious now. I wondered if this was actually a wrong number or maybe something else, but quite possibly it was just a prank from a random number. I texted back asking who it was. They did not respond though. I got up and went over to my window and closed the blinds. It was nighttime, and I had a very large window that led out to a patio. Next to that was a small courtyard that connected to the other apartment building. I wondered if somebody could in fact see me, but I didn't really think so. I didn't get any more texts for the rest of that night. Either the next night or the one after, I actually got a call though. When I saw the number was calling me, I hesitated before answering, but my curiosity got the better of me. Even though I was really nervous, I picked up. I said hello, and there was a pause before I heard a whisper of a man on the other end. He just said that he knew where I lived and that I was home. I didn't know what to make of this. I tried asking him who it was, but then he hung up on me. By now, I was really creeped out about this whole situation. After that call though, for a few days, there was nothing. Everything was fine and there were no texts or calls. I was starting to forget about it until late at night when there was a random knock at my door. I was in the other room and instantly thought that the knocking might be connected to the strange texts and stuff. I didn't want to answer it, so I didn't. The knocking continued on and off for about a minute or two. When it finally stopped, after a couple of minutes, I got up and checked the door as well as the hallway. There was nobody there anymore. I was really nervous, but I didn't go to the police or anything. For the next few days, nothing happened, and things were actually fine for a few weeks after that. It had all stopped, and I was really happy about it, but I didn't know why. Then I ended up finding out something crazy. There was this guy who lived in the apartment complex, and he had been arrested for stalking a woman who lived in the next building from mine. When I heard the details of the case, it sounded very similar to me. He had texted and called her repeatedly before somehow entering her apartment one night. She managed to escape and call police, leading to the guy being caught. When I heard this, I realized why it had stopped, because the man was caught. I'm really glad that they got him when they did. This happened just last summer. I live by myself in what I would describe as a typical apartment. I have one bedroom, a bathroom, kitchen, and living room pretty much. It's inside of a building in a fairly large apartment complex. So one night, I worked sort of late into the night at my job. I was really tired from the long day and pretty much just arrived home, took a quick shower, and went to bed. That was around midnight. However, I woke up at roughly 4 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, I wanted to get more sleep, but I was wide awake. I was also very thirsty and felt dehydrated. Sometimes, mostly in the summer, I wake up in the night because of dehydration, and obviously, on this night, I had worked late and not been able to drink as much. Then, usually, I drink some water and feel better immediately and then go right back to sleep. But some of the times when I wake up, I'm wide awake and can't go back to sleep right away. And this was one of those times. So what I usually do when that happens is get up and go into the living room and watch TV until I get sleepy again. That might be 15 or 30 minutes usually. So that was what I did on this night. I got out of bed, drank some water, immediately felt better, and then sat on the couch and turned on the TV. My couch is to the right of the front door to the apartment, about 20 feet away. I remember that when I sat down, I glanced over and happened to notice that my door was actually unlocked. I realized that I somehow had forgotten to lock it. Normally, I always remember, but I guess I forget sometimes. I went over and locked the door and then went back to the couch. I started watching TV and waited for myself to feel sleepy again. I was flipping around the channels for maybe 5 minutes when suddenly I heard a noise. Obviously, it was very quiet other than the noise from the TV, but the sound I heard was somebody trying to open the front door to my apartment. I really couldn't believe it, and I had no idea who it could be. I sat and listened, but didn't hear anything else. Then, after a moment, I got up and I walked over to the door. I looked out of the peephole, but nobody was there. Then I opened up my apartment door and looked into the hallway. That's when I saw him. There was a man wearing a hooded sweatshirt walking away from me down the hallway. He was mostly looking down at the ground, and then he went to another door and tried opening it, but this one was also locked. I watched him go to another door and try that one as well. Apparently, he hadn't noticed me opening the door. I didn't know who this guy was, but he was seemingly trying to get into any apartment. As he reached the end of the hallway, he suddenly looked behind him and then he saw me. When he did, I quickly closed the door. I was afraid that he would come back, but he didn't. Soon after, I went back to bed. I'm really glad that I woke up when I did that night and locked my door, or who knows what could have happened. Many years ago, I used to live in this crappy apartment by myself. I had a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit on the second floor of the building. During the time of this event, I'd been living there for over a year. So one night, I was by myself, and I had been home for several hours. It was about 9 o'clock at night or so, and I was hanging out in the living room. I remember that I kept hearing the sound of somebody walking down the hallway. Like I said, the apartment was not the nicest, and it was kind of old. So the walls were pretty thin, and you could hear whenever somebody walked down the hallway. But it wasn't a big problem, because the building was usually pretty quiet, and there were maybe 10 or 12 units total on my floor. So it didn't happen very often where people would walk by. But I seemingly heard somebody walk back and forth down the hallway about 10 times in the span of like 5 or 10 minutes. After hearing this person walk by, I got curious as to what was going on. I got up and walked over to my door, and then looked out of the peephole. After looking out for maybe 10 seconds, I heard footsteps. Then I saw a man walk down the hallway right past my door. He was kind of tall, thin, and had sort of long hair, and I didn't recognize him as anybody who lived there, but I figured that he probably did. After walking past my door, he went down the hallway. I kept watching for a little bit, and then I started to walk away. But I heard the footsteps then coming back, like he turned around. So I walked back over to the door and looked out of it again. This time, the man started walking by again, but right as he got even with my door, he suddenly stopped, and then he turned his head and looked directly at my door. It was like he could see me, and I quickly moved back. It was really creepy. The guy started standing there right in front of my door. I did not go back to look. Instead, I went back into the living room. But a short time later, I heard a knocking on my door. I had a bad feeling about it, knowing that it was the strange guy who was walking up and down the hallways. Obviously, I had no clue what he wanted, but I also didn't want to know. So I did not get up and go answer the door, but he continued to knock. He would knock for a few seconds, stop, and then knock again. This went on for several minutes. I got annoyed, and I eventually got up and went to look again. When I did, I saw this guy still standing there on the other side. He started knocking seemingly louder than before, now pounding on the door with his fists. Then he actually tried opening my door. It was locked, but I moved away again, hoping that he wouldn't be able to somehow get inside. He kept alternating between pounding on the door and trying to open it. After this went on for a while, I heard the sound of someone else's voice in the hallway. I recognized it as my neighbor Jerry, who lived across the hall and to the right. The guy stopped banging on my door, and I heard the two of them talking. Then, all of a sudden, I heard some shouting and what seemed like an altercation. I went over to the door, and this time I opened it. I saw Jerry laying on the ground, and just barely saw the other guy sprinting to the end of the hallway and then leave. I went over to Jerry and asked if he was okay. Jerry said that the guy had punched him in the face and attacked him. I went and called the police, and then Jerry and I waited for them. Jerry was fine, but he said that he had wanted to see what all the racket was about because he heard the guy knocking on someone's door. He went out and questioned the guy, and he said at that point the guy just attacked him. The police looked around, but the guy had left the building. After that, the man did not return. I don't know why he was trying to get into my apartment, or what he was even doing there. I feel bad that Jerry got beat up, but I'm glad that he was okay. The whole thing was very strange. A strange thing happened to me a couple of years ago. At the time, I lived in an apartment by myself. It was a one-bedroom, one-bathroom place, and I lived on the second floor of the building. Overall, the apartment was not the nicest, and it didn't have that many units in it either. I knew a few of my neighbors, but not all of them. One night, I was at home by myself, like usual. It was sometime at night, I really don't know exactly the time, but there was a knock on my door. I walked over and answered it, without giving it that much thought. A man was standing there. He was kind of short and had dark brown hair. The man told me that he was my neighbor from down the hallway, and he pointed a ways to the left. He asked me if he could come inside of my apartment to make a phone call. He said that his Wi-Fi was not working, and he didn't have any service on his phone at the time, so without the Wi-Fi, he couldn't make any calls. I was not comfortable with this. I told the man sorry but no. He said that he would be really fast, and I told him that I really couldn't help him. He kind of came across as a little bit sketchy to me for some reason. The man turned to walk away, and I closed my door. I was really curious afterwards. I had never seen the man before, and had seen most of the people who lived in the building because it wasn't all that big. I thought maybe the guy would knock on another person's door, and I quietly opened my door and looked around the corner to see him walking away. He walked all the way to the end of the hall, and then he went inside of the elevator. I was suspicious that he didn't even live here. At one point or another, I had seen just about everyone that lived on my floor. After the man left, I went to one of the windows in my place. I looked out of it and to the guest parking lot where the main doors open up to. Now, there are assigned parking spaces for all the residents, and those are under the building. There's a small guest parking lot with like 10 spaces out front. I saw the man leave the building and then walk to an older-looking car in the guest parking lot and drive away. He definitely didn't live here. So why would he lie to me and claim that he did? I didn't know, but the fact that he wanted me to let him inside of my apartment kind of creeps me out. He certainly made up the whole story about his Wi-Fi being down and him not having any cell phone service. I'm not sure how he got into the building in the first place, but most likely somebody else let him in when they were entering. After that night, I never saw him again. That pretty much confirmed to me that he didn't live there. I'm really glad that I didn't let him inside of my apartment. I don't go on Facebook that much, but I do go on from time to time, and last year something really strange happened. One day I went on Facebook for the first time in probably a couple of weeks. When I did, I saw that I had one new friend request and clicked on it to see who it was. The person appeared to have the same exact profile as me. They had the same name as me and the same profile picture. It was like they were pretending to be me. I clicked on the profile, assuming it to probably be a bot, but this was really strange. There was not a whole lot that I could see right away on the page, so I accepted the friend request to see more. After I did, I saw that this person pretending to be me had posted several of the same pictures that I had on my page, but this profile only had one friend, which was now me. I was still thinking that it was a bot of some sort, and this was really weird. I sent a message to the person saying, "What's the meaning of this?" They responded back rather quickly, saying exactly what I had sent to them. "What's the meaning of this?" I asked who it was, and they wrote back the same thing, just imitating what I said. It was really weird. I figured at this point that it was probably some kind of a prank. I got off of Facebook and texted a few of my friends about it. However, when I did, none of my friends admitted to it and didn't seem to know what was going on. I know my friends pretty well, and they all seemed genuinely confused. The next day, I was really curious as to who it was, so I went back on and sent another message to the page. This time, hoping that it was a joke somebody was playing on me for some reason, I said, "This is a funny joke, but seriously, who are you?" The page responded just saying, "This is not a joke." They finally said something other than just what I had said to them. I asked them to stop pretending to be me, saying that it was really weird. They responded saying, "Okay, I will just take your account then." I didn't know what they meant by this, but I was annoyed and I blocked the page right then and there. I thought that was that. The next day, however, I got a Facebook notification randomly saying that several people had liked my photo. I hadn't posted anything lately, so I went on to see. That's when I realized that my account had been hacked. There was a picture posted to my account, It was my profile picture, but put through several filters, and it looked really weird. Whoever was behind this said they would hack my account, and they did. I really couldn't believe it. I quickly deleted the post and then changed my password. I hadn't told my previous password to anyone, so I don't know how they would have even known it. After that, I didn't go on Facebook for a long time, and also strangely, the person never hacked into my account again or sent me another friend request or message. I still don't know who did that or why. It's very mysterious. I used to live in this old apartment when I was younger. It was really an old house that was converted into a duplex, I guess. I had a kitchen, living room, bedroom, and bathroom. Then there was a staircase going down to a very small entryway and the door. The other side, I guess, had basically the same thing, but I didn't know who lived there or anything. So I lived in this apartment for several months. It was cheap and pretty close to my work. Other than that, it was nothing special. I never knew anything strange to happen over the course of the first month that I lived there. I pretty much would be at work a lot, but when I was home I never had any problems. But then there were a few nights where I realized I was waking up in the middle of the night. I just know that I woke up and then went back to sleep pretty much right away one time. Then, another time, I woke up to what I thought was a noise, but I didn't hear anything more after waking up. I remember sitting up in bed and listening closely, but did not hear anything at all. So eventually, I just went back to sleep. This was strange because I normally slept really well and never woke up in the night. These were situations that I didn't even necessarily remember during the next day. But then, when I woke up in the middle of the night for a third time in about a week, I was sure I heard a noise, and I found it really strange. Once more, I sat up and listened, but I didn't hear any more noises. I couldn't figure out if I was dreaming the noise or if it happened when I was awake. It just seemed pretty strange. But after a while of nothing again, I finally fell back asleep. I wasn't really sure what was going on, or what was the cause of me waking up. But then, one of the very next nights, I remember that I woke up again. I don't really remember hearing any noises, but I also was like wide awake immediately after waking up, which was weird. I didn't sit up, but rolled over to my other side. I was looking in the rest of the room, which was completely dark, but I then heard a small creaking sound. It was as if my bedroom door was being opened slowly. I looked over and saw that it was. Then I saw somebody suddenly enter the room from the doorway. It was a man, but I couldn't make out any details. The guy took a step into the room, but did not advance any farther. I was literally too scared to move. It was so dark that I'm not sure if he knew I was awake or not. The man then took out some sort of camera and took a picture of me. Then he disappeared back behind the doorway, going into the hall. I honestly couldn't believe it. I didn't know what on earth was happening. Then I heard some creaking from the floor in the hallway, and I heard a noise like a door being opened and closed. It was quiet but noticeable. After that, everything went completely silent again. I sat in bed without hearing anything for probably the next 10 or 20 minutes. I wasn't sure if I was being robbed or what, but I hadn't heard any noises in a long time. I finally got up and walked around my bedroom. There still was no other sounds, and then I left and went out into the hallway. I turned on a light and did not see or hear anything. Then I went around every room slowly and looked around. My place really wasn't that big, so it didn't take me long to realize that the other person was gone. But when I got to the end of the hallway upstairs, past my bedroom and across from a closet, I realized what must have happened. There was a door leading to my next door neighbors. However, this door I was told was not in use and was always locked. It even had a small table with a lamp on it in front of it, and the door was painted the same color as the wall, so it wasn't really that noticeable. But I knew that had to be where the person had gone. For some reason, the door must not be locked on the other side. After that, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up the rest of the night. In the morning, as soon as I was able to, I contacted the management for my place. I reported what was happening, and I started looking for another apartment immediately. The next few nights, I stayed at a friend's. Long story short, there was a man who lived next door, and he was caught. I'm happy that he never got in my place again after that. The times I had been waking up must have been when he left to go back to his place, possibly when he was closing the door. I will never forget seeing him in my room. It was the creepiest situation that's ever happened to me. This is a story that took place back when I was a kid. I was probably somewhere between the ages of 8 and 10. At that age, I loved Christmas, mainly because of all the things that I would get. I lived with my parents, brother, and sister in a 2-story home in a typical neighborhood. Each year, we would do lots of decorating inside and outside of the house. Our Christmas tree would go in the corner of our living room, and all the presents would go underneath it. On Christmas Eve that year, we went to my grandparents' house, and then we were going to my uncle's on Christmas. That night, on Christmas Eve, after we all went to bed, I had a difficult time falling asleep. I usually did when I was a kid because I was always so excited for Christmas. I finally was able to doze off for a bit, but woke up sometime later when it was still the night. I remember just turning over to try to go back to sleep, but then I thought I heard a noise. It sounded like it was coming from downstairs. My bedroom was the closest to the stairs, and even I could barely hear it. I looked at the clock, and it was 2 a.m. I didn't know why anybody would be up at this hour. Being that young and a curious kid, I decided to go and look. I left my bedroom and then walked a few feet to the railing of the stairs that overlooked the living room. I looked down, and everything seemed normal. All of the lights were off, but the lights from the Christmas tree and the few other decorations were on, so I could see a little bit. I looked down at the tree for a little while longer. It was very large, and we always got the biggest tree that we could find. But then I saw somebody come out from behind the tree. It wasn't my dad or brother, but a random guy that I didn't know. As soon as I realized that it was a random guy, I turned and ran. I went to the end of the hallway where my parents' bedroom was. I woke them up and told them that there was some guy in the house. I remember that my dad got up to look. He came back a short time later and said that he saw somebody leaving the house through the window. The police were called, and when they got out to our house, searched all over our property. They didn't find the guy, but they did find that our window was broken. None of us had heard it break, so the guy must have quietly done it somehow. It was a living room window that was broken, and I think that I saw him not long after he got in the house, because nothing was even stolen. I think that he either saw me or heard me, and that scared him off. I'm just really glad that he didn't try to come upstairs or anything. It still really freaked me out knowing that somebody broke in. It took me a long time to be able to fall back asleep, but eventually I was able to. That was by far my craziest Christmas experience. Nothing like that has happened since, much less on Christmas. I still don't know who the guy was though and why he chose our house. I also don't know if the police ever found him. It started one Saturday afternoon when I was sitting in my living room, scrolling through social media. I switched to a new phone and a new number a few months ago. My old number was still active, but I didn't think much of it because it had been quiet. Suddenly, my phone buzzed, and when I looked down, I saw it was a text from my old number. The message read, "I see you." It was odd because I thought it was just some spam or a wrong number, so I shrugged it off. A few hours later, another message came through saying, "You don't remember me?" I had forgotten to change my number on a few accounts, so it was possible that somebody had gotten a hold of it. I decided to reply, trying to keep it light, and I typed back, "Who is this?" The response was quick and said, "You know who I am." I didn't want to engage further, so I put my phone down and tried to watch a movie, but the messages nagged at the back of my mind. The next day, the text continued, saying more creepy and odd things. I stopped replying for a while. Monday brought more messages, saying things such as, "I'm closer than you think," and "You'll remember me soon." I debated calling the police, but what would I even say? Somebody is texting me creepy things from my old number? It felt ridiculous. By Tuesday, I was on edge, and I couldn't focus at work. The messages were escalating, saying, "I know what you did last summer," and kept repeating, "You'll remember soon." I tried to block the number, but it kept coming through, so I finally decided to involve the police and see if they could do anything. I explained the situation, and they filed a report. The messages continued for all the next week, and I tried to ignore them as best as I could. I finally got a call from the police a week later. They had traced the text back to an old acquaintance from high school, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. He had been using some sort of app to send the messages from my old number. That night, I confronted him at his house, and his parents answered the door, so it ended up working out perfectly to involve them as well. It was awesome to see his face when he came downstairs and saw me talking to his parents and showing texts that he had sent to me. So that was the last problem I had with the kid, but it was still scary before I knew who was behind it all.
I live in a small country where things still go bump in the night, and that doesn't go for just creepy local legends. Dark strangers, cartels, I think you get the idea. Where I live, nowhere is truly removed from the day-to-day dangers of the unknown. It was a dark night. I found myself home alone. Here, it isn't uncommon for the entire family to live together. Grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren will all share a growing piece of property for wealth and security. It's the simplest way to live. But as you can imagine, being home alone is a rarity. With so many people under one roof, it's almost impossible to time anything just right to ever be actually alone. So I did what I always do. I hooked up the surround sound throughout the living room and turned out all the lights. I bundled up on the couch with my favorite snack and watched whatever I desired on the big family television. Despite the ever-present danger I mentioned earlier, I remember the evening being quite relaxing. Rain and a breeze moved in along the coast and created a pitter-patter against the roof. As the night went on, I thought I heard someone at the front door. As I moved to investigate, the sound and movement stopped. But being a stormy night, and that I had the sound up so loud, I truly in my heart believed I'd simply heard something that wasn't there. I turned back to the movie and did my best to relax. That's when the back door began to rattle. I adjust myself on the sofa to get a better look. When someone starts to knock, a frantic, heavy banging against the hard wood. I froze in place. Whatever I dismissed as storm sounds, or maybe just the junk blowing around in the backyard, is now undeniable. There's someone trying to come inside the house. Everyone who lives there naturally has a key. Whoever is outside the door clearly does not. At the time, I'm an 18-year-old man. I'm running through the logical scenarios in my head. Whoever this is, they tried to open up the front door, then slip around the side of the house, and is now trying to force the back door open. This isn't cartel or a monster. Anything with real bloodlust would have forced the front door open. I reasoned that it's a common thief, probably someone very nervous and trying to remain unseen. Being 18, I decided to take them head on and show the world this asshole picked the wrong house. I moved from the couch to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest cleaver I can find. 10 inches of dingy, ugly steel. Still, the door handle is twisting back and forth. Go time. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm down for whatever. There's nothing like the mentality of a teenager. You don't know who you're messing with, I shouted through the door. The stranger on the other side stopped shaking the handle for a moment. I know you're out there. You have 3 seconds to get the out of here, or I'll cut you up. They didn't care. The knocking started again, even harder than before. My confidence quickly faded. I took a deep breath and readied myself. In my head, this was do or die. Hoisting the cleaver over my head, I unfastened the bolt and threw open the door before me. It wasn't a burglar or a gangster of any kind. It was my sweet little grandma. She stood there soaking wet with an expression of agitation, but also unmistakable terror. "What are you doing?" she shouted at me. "Me? What are you doing at the back door?" I asked. "I thought you were an intruder." "Oh, no. She laughed as she stepped inside the house. I went and paused the television while she shed her coats by the door. She explained that she'd gotten home during the storm, tried knocking for a while. That was the noise I heard at the front door. I guess she knocked for quite a while because she finally gave up and decided to try the back door. The front entrance has a little cover, so she figured that even if it were locked, at least she would be out of the rain. That's when I started to hear the commotion and decided to go to war with whatever was outside. Glad I didn't though, because I seriously almost killed my grandma.
Back in the day, I used to work at Sears. This is when they were doing really well and had tons of stores. If anybody doesn't remember Sears, they were a large department store that sold many things like appliances and clothes. It's mostly gone out of business in recent years though. But when I worked there, we would get lots of people in the store. Well, one time I was working a long day in December. With it being around Christmas time, there were lots of people shopping for gifts and stuff. It was also a weekend, so that added to it. I worked basically all day and I saw countless people. When I was finally off of work, I was happy to go home and was tired. So I just remember that I clocked out of work and then left the store. I went out to my car and then drove back home. It took maybe 15 minutes or so to get back. Then I parked my car in the driveway and got out of it. However, as I was walking up to my front door, I heard a car coming down the street, which was usually very quiet. I noticed it but didn't really think that much of it at all, and I kept going. However, as I was opening my door to go inside, I happened to hear the car slowing down. I looked over to see that the car was starting to pull over to the side of the street in front of my house. So I stopped and I kept watching it because I wanted to see what this car was doing. I did not recognize the car as a neighbor or anybody that I knew. The car pulled over and came to a stop just in front of my mailbox. Then the driver's window rolled down a little, and I saw somebody open up my mailbox and then put something inside of it. I couldn't really tell who the person was from where I was. I think it was a man, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, I didn't really know what this person was doing or what they had put in my mailbox. After that, they rolled their window back up and then they drove away. I went back outside, and after seeing that the car was out of my sight, I walked down to my mailbox. I opened it and I looked inside to see an unmarked envelope. I brought it inside. When I opened up the envelope, there were several Polaroid pictures in it. They were all pictures of me. The first were me working at Sears earlier that day when I was at the registers working as a cashier. I had not known that any of these photos were taken. They were taken at a distance too, so it was not obvious to me and I never noticed it. There was then a photo of me walking in the store, I think when I went on my break. And the last photo was of me walking out to my car in the parking lot after work. This was clearly taken from inside of a car that was also in the parking lot. I hadn't noticed any of them. Of course, I was very freaked out by this. I didn't know what to do about it or anything. I didn't go to the police or report it, but I did tell my friends as well as coworkers. They were all just as confused as I was. The rest of my time working at Sears, I didn't notice anything else like that, and I never saw that car at my house again. I'm not sure where the pictures are. I think I still have them somewhere, but I couldn't find them. It's been so long. But I'd still like to know why that person did that. Was it just an elaborate prank? Why would they choose me though? And they must have followed me home without me noticing. It's all very strange.